Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. Over Christmas, we watched one of my favorite Christmas films, which is The Holiday. And if anyone hasn't watched that, the basic storyline is there are two women who are very unlucky in love, and they decide that they're going to swap houses. One's going to go to America, one's going to come to England. And Kate Winslet, who's the one who goes to America, when she's there, she meets her next-door neighbor, who's this very sweet little old man. And she finds out that he used to be a famous film director. And one of my favorite bits of the film is where he explains to her this concept of a meet cute, which is basically in a rom-com where the two characters meet each other for the first time, the ones who are eventually going to fall in love. And it's normally very funny, very charming, some kind of lovely way they've met each other. So I hear you asking, Laura, how did you meet your husband? That must have been funny and charming and sweet. So I met Alex when we were 14. He moved to my high school, and I was one of those sort of goody two-shoes kids that used to show all the new kids around the school. Not by choice, I was asked to. But I was asked to go and show Alex to his next lesson, show him where everything was. And so I went up to him at the end of maths, and I offered to take him to our next lesson, which we had together as well. And unbeknownst to me, Alex had decided that the best way to show me how charming he was would be when I offered him to show him where he was going, to say, I'll find my own way, thanks. And then he got lost, and he was late, and I have to say I felt very smug about it. Have you ever met someone who has changed the course of your life? And not just romantically, it could be a friend. We had a friend in Cheltenham, and the very first time that we hung out, me and her, I was supposed to be going around to hang out in the morning for like a coffee and maybe to have some lunch. And we ended up spending 8 hours together. Basically, we had the coffee, we had the lunch. She was like, why not stay for a bit longer? Stay for the afternoon. So I stayed for the afternoon. Then she was like, oh, just stay for dinner. And there it was, 8 hours had gone by. And it's the same when we meet God. We can't help but be changed. We meet a person who changes the course of our lives, and that person is Jesus. I can look back on every significant moment of my life, good and bad, and see where God was at work, see where he was moving and where he changed me. And all of those moments have happened because I first met God. And we can't meet God and not be changed. We can't meet God and not change the people and the places and the circumstances around us. So we're going to talk today about some of the things that happen when we meet God, and the ways that his presence challenges us and changes us to become more like him. So one of the first things that God does when we meet him is he shows us who he is. I grew up going to church. My mum and my dad are both Christians, but I never really connected with it. I found church a bit dusty and dry and old, and I wasn't totally convinced that there's even a God, so I wasn't really sure what I was doing there. And when I was 13, I started going to our local youth church because I've got an older brother and sister, and they went, so it's kind of expected that I would go too. And a couple of months in, they were running a weekend away, and I did not want to go. I used to I hated the church, to be honest, because I was super, super shy back then. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to sing in front of anyone. Everyone would raise their hands in worship, which I thought was weird. I just did not know what I was doing there, and I didn't like it, so I did not want to go on this church weekend away. But my mum and dad asked me if I wanted to go, and I was like, sure. And I thought, I'll go, and this will be the last thing that I do, and I'll say to them, look, I've given it a go, I've tried my hardest, it's not for me. But God had a different plan, a plan to meet me for the first time. So on the Saturday night of this weekend away, a girl came up to me and asked me if she could pray for me, if I would like prayer. And I didn't want to offend her, so I said, I would love prayer, even though I didn't want prayer. So she prayed for me, and while she was praying, I had a picture from God for the first time. I actually had 3 pictures. And it was almost like a thought popped into my head, but I didn't think it. It was just there. This had never happened to me before, and I had no idea what was going on. But I saw these 3 pictures, and in the third one, I saw Jesus being nailed to the cross. And a couple of minutes after this happened, they started playing a film clip up on the screens that they had. And they showed a clip from a film called Jesus of Nazareth, and they showed the scene where Jesus is being crucified. And detail for detail, it was exactly what I'd just seen in my mind, and I had never seen this film before. And in that moment, I believed for the first time that all of this stuff is real, that Jesus is real and that he died for me, that the Holy Spirit is real. And for the first time ever, I encountered God and I believed in his presence. When we encounter God, he shows us who he is. In Matthew 14, Jesus sends his disciples off in the boat because he wants to go up the mountainside to pray. And a bit of time has passed because he's doing that, and they've been swept really far out to sea because it's very windy. And it says, shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." When we recognize the power and the majesty of Jesus, we can't help but worship. We can't help but be changed. The disciples knew who Jesus was before this. They've been with him day in, day out. But in this moment, they suddenly understand who Jesus is. That he has power even over nature. That he has the power to save us when we feel like we're drowning. Or in Simon Peter's case, when we're actually drowning. You might have been coming to church for a while now, and you might know this stuff with your head, but maybe you've never really had that moment where you truly understand who Jesus is with your heart, that he has the power to save and to overcome in your life. In that moment where I first felt the power and the presence of the Holy Spirit, I felt exactly the same as the disciples. I suddenly understood that God isn't just a fairy tale in a made-up book, but the creator of the world, the same God who sent his son, a living, breathing man who lived on this earth to die for me. God whose spirit is still at work now. And I had heard all of those things before. I knew them, but I didn't really understand them until that moment, until the moment where I first met Jesus. And you can't recognize those things about him and not be changed. And it's not just our understanding that changes. When we encounter Jesus, he gives us a new identity. In John 1, verse 42, Jesus calls Simon Peter, one of the first disciples. And it says, Jesus looked at him, Peter, and said, "You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas," which when translated is Peter. Jesus gives Simon a new name, a new identity, a new start when he first meets him. Cephas, or Peter, means rock. And Jesus tells him later in Matthew 16, verse 18, "On this rock I will build my church." Simon is going to be part of the foundation that the church is built on. And this passage where Jesus tells him that his name will be Rock, Peter, this is the first time that Jesus has met him. He doesn't even know him. Simon hasn't proved that he's worthy or wise or even that he's ready. But Jesus calls him and he gives him a new identity, a new name, a new purpose, the rock on which his church will be built. When we encounter God, he gives us a new identity too. We're not who we were before. We have a new identity in Jesus. He can use us to build his church, no matter whether we're qualified or prepared or ready or good enough or holy enough. He calls us. He knows us. And he knows who we were made to be. A few years ago, I went through a really rough patch in my faith, in my mental health. It felt like everything about me was just breaking down. I doubted who God was. I doubted what he says about me. I stopped reading my Bible because it felt like empty words on a page. I was full of fear and uncertainty about the future, and I felt gripped by this irrational fear of death because I didn't feel certain anymore that I knew where I was going. But the beautiful thing about Jesus is he doesn't leave us broken. If we're able, if we're willing to offer him our brokenness, he has the ability to remake us, to transform us into something more beautiful, more whole. He has the ability to give us a new identity. Simon Peter didn't come to Jesus ready and perfect and equipped. I actually love Simon Peter because he is so deeply human. He constantly makes mistakes. He asks stupid questions. He's impulsive. He is not the finished article. But Jesus looks at him and sees him and gives him a new identity. Do you want to know the thing that started to rebuild me when I felt broken? Giving everything, giving my brokenness to Jesus. I had to stop pretending that I had it all together. I had to stop pretending to myself that I could fix whatever was going on inside of me. I had to be willing to be vulnerable and open and come to Jesus, broken, incomplete, deeply human like Simon Peter, with a life full of mistakes, but willing to let him change me, to let him equip me. I had to be willing to accept the identity that he speaks over me, not the lies that I was speaking over myself. And the Bible actually has a lot to say about the identity that we have in Jesus. It says that we're chosen, that we're treasured, that we're irreplaceable, that we're loved beyond compare, that we're worth dying for. We're forgiven, we're his children, we're set free, we're precious. And God says all of those things, despite knowing everything about us, despite knowing everything about me. He knows our flaws, he knows our failures. They're not a surprise to him. He knows all of our mistakes. And I don't know about you, but I've made a lot of those, and I think I'm probably going to continue to. Jesus knows you. He already knows everything in your heart, everything in your past, everything in your future. He knows you, and he still chooses you. With all your brokenness, with all your mistakes, with your pain, he chooses you. He doesn't just call the equipped, the people who are ready, the people who are good enough. He equips the people that he's called, and that's me and you. You can come exactly as you are to meet him today, and he can give you a new identity as a child of God. And that stuff, that brokenness and those mistakes and the things that you see as your shortcomings, he can use it. He can use your brokenness and your pain. And not only can he use it, but he can transform it into your passion. I don't think God wanted me to go through all the things in my life that have been painful, but I do think that he's been able to use those things to transform me and my faith and my trust in him. And also, he's actually been able to use it to transform the lives of other people. I've got up here on this stage and I've told this story over and over again. And every time there's been people who've responded, people who've come up for prayer, people whose lives have been transformed. And I constantly feel challenged by God to keep talking about it, even if I really don't want to keep talking about my weakness and my brokenness so that his power to overcome and transform will be glorified. Jesus has used that struggle to bring light into darkness, to bring hope into people's hopelessness. I don't think that he wanted me to hurt, but I do think that he is using that struggle and he's redeeming it for his glory. In the book of Ephesians, St. Paul describes 5 ways of serving the church. We've got apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, and teacher. Now, for me, I feel most akin to the shepherd, or sometimes it's called pastor. I love people, and I feel really compassionate towards people. If anything, I'm too much of a feeler. I will take on your pain. I will feel your pain on your behalf. I like people. And I think that one of the ways that God has used the periods of struggle and pain in my life, one of the ways that he's redeemed that is to break my heart for other people who are struggling, to give me a greater sense of compassion for people who are broken. And is that something that I would have gravitated towards anyway? Maybe. But maybe God was able to transform my pain into my passion. Those years weren't wasted because they've made me who I am now. I'm not who I was before, but God has used it to bring transformation and peace and his presence into the lives of other people who are struggling. But part of Jesus choosing Simon Peter, giving him that new identity, part of Jesus choosing us, giving us a new identity, is challenging. He challenged Simon Peter to do something new, to push himself out of his comfort zone. He challenged him to trust him and to rely on him. When we meet God, he challenges us. He challenges us to change. He challenges us to trust and to keep on trusting. He challenges us to rely on him fully through the fear, through the failures. But actually, our bodies are hardwired to resist change and challenge. Our brain's primary function is to survive. It prefers predictability, stability. Anything unknown is often perceived as a threat. And uncertainty can lead to our brain releasing cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which increases our anxiety and increases our emotional resistance to change. It's hard to change our minds. It's hard to change our bodies. When we try and lose weight, our body actively fights against it by increasing our hunger and decreasing our fullness signals. Change is challenging. But when we meet God, we can't stay the same. When we meet God, he challenges us to become more like him, more sacrificial, more generous, more loving, more reliant on him. But there's nothing easy about doing that. I like to think of myself as a fairly generous person, but I do also love to save, and by nature, I'm quite careful with money. And every time that we talk about giving at church, which is not that often, but every time we do, I feel that little nudge from God that maybe me and Alex need to think about being more sacrificial. Maybe we need to lead by example. Maybe we need to be more reliant on him with our finances. Every single time. You think I'd anticipate it by now, but still it takes me by surprise. And do I want to do that? Do I lean into that challenge with joy and willingness and openness? No, I don't, because I want to be in control of my money and where it goes and how I use it. But I feel God challenge me over and over again about my reliance on money, because really it's my reliance on myself for safety and security rather than trusting that he's going to give me those things. And I constantly feel challenged by Jesus to let go and to let God work in me, work through me, change me to become more like him. I have not, by any stretch of the imagination, got this all together, and I've been a Christian for 24 years, so if you're here and you feel the same, know that we're in this together. Today might be the day to take that first step, to loosen your grip on everything that you're trying to hold together in your own strength, and to let God meet you and challenge you and transform you. Because if we're willing to let Jesus transform us and use us for his glory, we will see amazing things happen. Jesus can do incredible, miraculous things when we meet him. One of my favorite stories of healing in the Bible is in Mark 5, verse 5, chapter 21 to 43. And there's a man called Jairus who's a leader in the synagogue, and his daughter is dying. So he comes and he begs Jesus to come and heal her. And as Jesus makes his way through the crowd to go to Jairus' house to heal this girl, there's a woman who's been suffering from bleeding for 12 years. And she touches his clothes because she believes that even just touching his clothes is enough to heal her. And it is. Jesus says to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace, be cured from your illness." But while all of this is happening, some of the leaders of the synagogue come out to Jairus and they tell him that his daughter has died, that it's too late and to leave Jesus. But Jesus tells Jairus, "Don't be afraid, just believe." And Jesus goes into Jairus' house. It's surrounded by people weeping and mourning because this little girl has just died. And he takes some of his disciples and Jairus and the girl's mother into this room. And he says to this little girl, "Little girl, get up." And she does. And the reason that I love this story so much is that the Bible tells us that the little girl is 12. And the woman who's been bleeding has been bleeding for 12 years. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's Jesus bringing restoration, bringing transformation, bringing life, bringing peace. A woman who's lost 12 years of her life to a painful, humiliating, expensive, embarrassing condition. She would have been considered ritually unclean, so she wouldn't have been able to eat with other people. She wouldn't have been able to sit with other people. She wouldn't have even been able to touch other people without them becoming unclean too. But she touches Jesus. And instead of being made unclean, he calls her daughter. He restores her dignity, her identity, her health, and he gives her peace. And then he heals the little girl who was dead, and he brings her back to life. Even death looks like life to Jesus. Even complete hopelessness and despair and isolation look like hope to Jesus. He can work miracles in the most dire of situations, even when you've given up hope and you've given up praying, and maybe even you've given up the faith that he can heal. He can restore you and he can give you peace. Sometimes the idea of praying for healing can be really scary because it's a vulnerable thing, but God has the power to heal. I've seen it happen in my life over and over again, both emotionally and physically. God is able to breathe life into things that feel very, very dead and very hopeless. Even now, every time we sing the song, Great Are You, Lord, and we get to the bridge and it says, all the earth will shout your praise, our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Every time I have to stop myself from bursting into tears because God spoke to me really powerfully about a passage in Ezekiel 37 where there's a valley of dry bones and God breathes life back into them. And every time we sing that song, I'm reminded of how I felt like I was dead and God breathed life back into me. God is able to work miracles, and I would love to encourage you, if there is something you need prayer for today, whether it's a physical thing or an emotional thing, to come up for prayer at the end of the service, because we would love to pray with you, and we would love you to experience God's healing. And what's even more incredible about Jesus is that he wants to use us to do these things too, to bring light into darkness, to bring hope into hopelessness, to bring healing. John 14, verse 12 says, very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these. Jesus isn't content to leave us as we are. He wants to challenge us, to change us, to use us, to bring the light of his kingdom into this broken world. One of my favorite things about so many miracles in the Bible is the way Jesus uses other people, uses his disciples to perform the miracle. When he turned the water into wine at the wedding of Cana, it was in the hands of the servants that the water became wine. When he fed the 5,000, it was in the hands of the disciples that the loaves and the fish multiplied. He wants to bring us into his story. He wants to use us to break into darkness. He wants to use us to break chains, to bring his healing, to bring his hope into a broken world. You have a part to play in the story of Jesus. He wants to use you, your gifts and your brokenness. All you need to do is be willing. Jesus didn't choose the disciples because they were the full package, but because they were willing. They had to rely on him. They had to trust in him because he was asking them to do miraculous things, things beyond their understanding, things beyond their capabilities. And he's asking you to do those things too. It's not enough to believe and just carry on the way we are. Believing in Jesus, meeting him, means being changed, being challenged to be his hands and his feet on this earth. We can't go into our jobs, our families, our uni degrees, and not carry the light of Jesus with us. It's there, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And he has the power to use you to bring hope and light into a dark and hopeless world. He can use your hands to do miracles. He can use your prayers to bring breakthrough. He can use your life, your brokenness, your testimony to bring other people into life, into his family, into his new identity for them. But you have to be willing to trust in him and to let him change you. If you're able, shall we stand together and pray?